Ahsoka about a enemy they have in common, and Ahsoka leaves with Bo-Katan, and that's where the episode ends.
Ooh, gotta catch your breath, man. That's a lot.
I know, right? That's a lot. So let's get into this. David, what were your first thoughts when you watched this episode?
Yeah, I thought, look, it's not only a great cap to this 4 episode arc, it was a really nice transition to the final arc of the Clone Wars. Um, you and I were talking before we were recording about what you had said in some previous episode. I don't know if it was last week's or the week before. Like, is this a 4 episode arc? Really, an 8 episode arc? It ends up the way that you hear Ashley talk about it in Clone Wars Download, that it is the 4 episode arc, but it really is a transition into this last arc. I loved how they did that. So I absolutely, enjoyed this. I wrote down some highlights for me. Obviously, the return of Maul, like you said, not Darth Maul, but Maul. And I just wrote down in season 5 of the Clone Wars, we see him defeated by Palpatine and imprisoned on Stygian. And that's where we have to go to the Son of Dathomir comic by Dark Horse. And I'll talk a little bit about that toward the end of our episode here and get people up to date on that. Because he does say, he mentions Crimson Dawn. When we last see him in the Clone Wars, he's actually the head of the Shadow Collective. So, again, it's moved us forward here. Another highlight for me was seeing the character arcs hinted at in the Fortune Cookie play out for Ahsoka, Trace, and Rafa. And the Fortune Cookie was, you can change who you are, but you cannot run from yourself. And so I thought that was really nicely played out in all 3 characters as you go across this last episode and tie that into the previous 3. The third highlight for me is hearing how Trace and Rafa respond to Ahsoka after they land back on Coruscant, like you mentioned, and level 1313. I definitely had tears in my eyes and loved how Ahsoka, like her showing them the core of the Jedi compared to the statement, don't worry, the Force will be with you, from what we believe is Luminar Unduli. That contrast is so huge, and I do want to talk about that a little bit more in final comments, but I loved seeing that part. And then, as you just mentioned, getting more Bo-Katan and Ursa Wren. Their invite, I kind of say, quote-unquote, invite to Mandalore and a return to the war. What a daunting thing to see Maul and to get on that gauntlet and head up out of the Coruscant underworld to get to this last arc. Is I'm so ready. I'm so geeked. I can't wait for Friday. So those are some of my initial thoughts. There's so much more, but you did a great job of running through the episode. So good. So those are just some initial thoughts, my friend.
Very good, very good. For me, this episode was a good wrap up to this arc. I thought this was a great episode. I enjoyed seeing Ahsoka exercise her powers through the Force. I loved how you mentioned it too, the fortune cookie tied right into the story with what happened. And I love that. It, like you said, this arc for me, and I think we discussed this a little bit in the last episode, this arc is Ahsoka's identifying who she is. She was lost after she left the Jedi Order. She wasn't sure of who she was. She met the Martez sisters who hate Jedi, which made her even question even more about who she is. And this is the closure in that episode where she realized who she is, what she needs to do, and that, like it says, you can't run from yourself. And it is good to see that transition, because this takes us one step closer to the Ahsoka we see, the older Ahsoka we see in Rebels. So I enjoyed it. loved a lot of the references to other movies or to the movies and some of the action, the characters. Maul, man, that dude. Honestly did not expect to see him in these episodes, but I'm glad we did. So awesome. I of course love having Bo-Katan in the mix. It was just a lot of fun stuff in this episode, so I enjoyed it as well. So let's go ahead and take a look in detail at some of the things we liked about the episode. Before we do, though, we are going to take a very quick break, and we'll be right back after this. Welcome back, everybody. Aaron and David here, Star Wars Reactions, and we are discussing Together Again. We're discussing Together Again. I'm just gonna sing till I'm done and can't think of words to rhyme. There we go. Anyway, now that that's out of my system, Together Again, folks. Great episode. You mentioned it in your opening statement, David, and I wanted to discuss the fortune cookie and how we saw that played out in this episode, because fortune cookie is you can change who you are, but you cannot run from yourself. And Ahsoka, of course, is living that statement out through this whole arc. She's running from the Jedi Order. She's left it. She's changed who she is. She's no longer a Jedi, but she's not sure who she is. But the core of her she is still the core beliefs of the Jedi, to help people, protect basically to serve and protect. And we see her doing that in this episode by enacting her for the Martez sisters to escape. How did you feel, David, and what's your thoughts on how this fortune cookie kind of mirrors Ahsoka's story in this arc and in this episode?
Yeah, well, it is, I don't know. I go back to the Clone Wars download, and you watch those, and then it influences how I think. And you hear Dave Filoni say, basically, he explains out the fortune cookie. He said, look, she's no longer part of the Jedi Temple or being a Jedi there, but he said he's always envisioned Ahsoka as someone who can, make her own decisions and even disagree with Anakin at times. He talked about the benefits of being mentored by Anakin and Obi-Wan, and I loved how he talked about that. But at the same time, he also described how she is very much like Qui-Gon Jinn. And I thought that was really neat how he described that, and how she's very selfless. He described Qui-Gon as selfless, and he says Ahsoka is. And you really hear Rafa talk about it to Trace in that one scene where they're at a refueling station. And she says, the way that she gave herself up for us like that, that's rare. And that really speaks to what I was talking about in my opening statements about Ahsoka showing them the core of the Jedi. This is what I want people of faith to do, is show the core of it versus let me just send thoughts and prayers your way, right? The empty semi-trailer, being sent over to Houston during Hurricane Harvey. Yeah, it doesn't mean a lot to people, but it was really influencing Rafa and Trace. And so, the fortune cookie was perfect, and I love seeing that play out for Ahsoka there, and to see that, I think there's a lot of reasons us Star Wars fans love her. There's a lot of reasons. Here's one that is right at the top for me, is because Ahsoka doesn't just talk a good game, she lives it out.
I love that. She does. She truly, truly does. And I love that statement. She does live it out. Ahsoka, what you see with Ahsoka is what you get. And it's great to see that in the character there. And it's something that we want to keep. You want people. That's how you want people to be. You don't want to, right now, especially nowadays, we see so many. There's people who they are in real life, and there's people who they are online. And it shouldn't be two different people. It should be the same person. Whoever you are in real life should reflect who you are everywhere else. And we don't see that, but with Ahsoka, that's exactly what it is. We see it. Whatever we get is what we get is what we get. And I love that we see that. And to me, it's very adamant in her plan to save the Martez sisters. She hatches that plan. She's like, just doesn't tell them what the plan is. Just trust me. And she knows their background. She knows it's just the two of them. They have no family. She gets before the head pike, the head pike, Mark Krim, voiced by Stephen Stanton, and basically goes forward and it's like, listen, I'll make you a deal. I'll tell you where the spice is, but here's what we're going to do. You let them go for 24 hours, give them a rotation, have them go get the spice and bring it back. There you go. You get your spice. It's all done. She goes, if they don't come back, I tell you where their family is and you can go take care of their family. So they agree. So they let Trace and Rafa go, and Ahsoka's left behind. And that's where, like you said, that statement comes in where Rafa's like, dude, that's rare. You don't see people doing that.
Right.
And I love, you could tell that action, even though it was oblivious to Trace, that action made an impact on Rafa.
And right, and that's what has to happen. Just talking isn't going to do it for Rafa.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Exactly. It's not going to just do it. I mean, the actions speak louder than words. You always hear, and that's what is going on in this case. I loved that, and man, so much good stuff there. Now, so much good stuff. Now, let's talk about Rafa. Of course, Rafa has her own plans, unbeknownst to Ahsoka. That Ahsoka had her own plan. She is going through and plans on going back to save Ahsoka. Part of it, she says it's for because she doesn't want Ahsoka to have one hanging over her head or anything like that. But after seeing how she reacted to what Ahsoka did to save them, you wonder if it's more of a sense of obligation out of respect. She saved us. The least we can do is try to save her. And she hatches it. Honestly, it's a brilliant plan if it works. It's a dumb plan if it doesn't, type thing. We're gonna steal spice from the Pikes to pay back the Pikes.
It strikes me as I could just see young Han Solo smiling and just saying, look, I just come up with this stuff on the fly,
That's
it's
exactly.
That kind of play. But
oh yeah, exactly. It's it's almost like one of the plans I would expect from Kaz during Resistance.
Right. There you go too. Yeah. And he looks at his friends, and he says, trust me. Yeah.
Exactly. And you see just Yeager and Tam just staring at him going, what? This is not going to work. Of course, Nico's like, yes, let's do it. This is a terrible idea, but we're going to have fun doing it.
Well, this part's the comic relief too. When Rafa and Trace are doing this, it is good. It is. I like what you said. If it could go horribly wrong really fast, and of course they have their fight scene with the Trandoshan, and like you said, the aliens on the dock are, I think it's pronounced Toons, right? Instead of Toon, it's Toons, and they're the same as Bed Quadraneros in the Phantom Menace. I immediately recognized them when I saw that. If I still had my creature corner, I'd be going crazy about this. I guess I still am. I like seeing those guys and their little antics and stuff. But But yeah, this is the you need it to contrast it with the Maul stuff and the seriousness there.
Oh, absolutely. And